I'm Ray Hanania.
I'm Bill Lipinski, and I welcome my fellow Americans to the news, views, and comments.
And we have one big topic this week. It seemed to dominate the news, although the major TV stations didn't seem too excited to broadcast it. But was the President Biden decided to give a speech to the nation, almost like it was a State of the Union, but it was like his, own address. What did you think of it? You watched it, right, Bill?
Yes, I did. I watched every minute of it. And unfortunately, I was very, very disappointed. It had been billed by the White House as a speech to bring Americans together. And that certainly turned out not to be the case. I think it further divided Americans. I think he got off to a very bad start midweek when he called the Trump supporters almost fascist. Now, when you do something like that, you open it up very wide for Republicans to start calling the progressive Democratic extreme left wing, socialist or perhaps even communist. If one half of the party says, or one half of the political leader says, you're a fascist, I guess you can call him a communist if you want. It's tit for tat. Very, very unfortunate, very disappointing. I don't know what was in his speech that would have brought us together. What do you think?
Yeah, I read his speech. I kind of, for some reason, I just didn't feel comfortable watching him this time because I didn't believe. He said so many times on his campaign, he said he's going to bring the country together. And in fact, over the past, almost 2 years now, nearly 2 years, all he's done is help feed the divide, fuel the divide. He's played partisan politics. And so I read his speech and I found it offensive. I found this is a person in the White House using the White House to make what is technically a political speech. And when I say using the White House, he had the, surroundings of the White House, but he was in Philadelphia at Independence Hall, which is where the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution were signed. So clearly his whole agenda is about the upcoming election, November 8th. It's not about America. It's about bringing his people together, I think, not the country together. Now, I agree with you. It was his comment, MAGA, Make America Great Again, Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundation of our republic. I don't know. I don't know if you can blame one group for the polarization we have today.
No, you certainly cannot. I don't know which side is more guilty, but there is certainly enough guilt on both sides to go around.
Yeah, I agree.
Another thing that he continually complains about the Trump people, Trump, wanting to be a dictator. He has signed into law. A number of them have already been reversed by the courts, but by executive order, he has done a number of things that he couldn't get through to Congress. One of them was the boondoggle he just gave away to people as far as their tuition goes.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Take loans, the people who paid off their loans, wind up getting nothing. And the people, who haven't paid off their loans, haven't paid the interest, apparently they're going to get bailed out by the federal government. But I believe it's simply a political ploy because I believe there'll be a number of persons that will take it to court, and the court will ultimately say that he can't do it. Nancy Pelosi, a year or so ago, said that the president couldn't do it himself. It had to be done by the Congress of the United States. And there's a number of other ones he's done the same thing with. So if there's any dictator floating around, it might be President Biden himself.
Yeah, the problem with the left seems to be that they have a disdain for any American who, one, works hard, two, puts his family first above everybody else, is law abiding, and pays their taxes, is responsible for themselves, and they're generous. They help other people. but the far left has pushed them aside and said, if you have nothing, if you're even a criminal, you deserve a second chance. And if you can't pay your bills, hey, we'll just have someone else pay for it. Let's make the people we don't like, the rich, quote unquote, pay for it. And what it really turns out to be is a tuition uh, uh, refund program basically is using the government to pay the banks. The banks are not going to lose any money. The
Oh, that's
banks,
sure.
they donate probably half of Congress has received donations from the bankers. So they're not going to make the bankers unhappy. So Biden's plan to refund that money, to pay that bill, to forgive that tuition money. I agree. What lesson does it teach? You go to college to learn, and then you come out of it saying, "Oh wow, I could rack up any debt I want, and eventually someone else will pay for it." If we have the right influence in this country, there's so much wrong about what's going on in this country today. It concerns me, and Biden's speech is the epitome of what's going wrong. To contradict his promise to bring people together, I think he should have reached out. I mean, let's go back and say, okay, if we were talking earlier about we need a good candidate or leader in this country to bring everybody together. So they should have reached out to Trump and said, listen, I don't agree with you. Let's sit down and talk. I didn't think Trump was unreasonable 8 years ago when I used to see him on TV every night, one of the most popular programs on television. All of a sudden, he gets into politics. He's a Democrat who becomes the more conservative Republican than the Republicans. There's something wrong with this picture. It's just strange.
Well, unfortunately, Trump, as you and I have discussed, and many people will agree with us, has done a number of very good things for this country, for all the people in this country, not for a select few. But his personality has
Yes,
just turned so many people against him. As I've
yes,
said, I didn't vote for him the first time. I didn't vote for him the second time. I won't vote for him if he runs again. Okay. Not
right.
because I object to many of his policies, but I object to him as an individual. Joe Biden, I think most of the time is a decent guy. Most of the time he comes across as being decent. That speech the other night, it must have been written by some left winger for him because that really didn't sound to be like Joe Biden. But with those, but his policies, this open border situation is utterly ridiculous. And then people get upset when the governor of Texas, sends some people to Washington, New York, Chicago, after they have been allowed into this country, scot free. Those people are illegal aliens.
Yeah.
Okay. And I wish
No,
we would treat them that way.
yeah, nobody should come into this country without going through the same process that everybody else does.
Right.
And I know that we've had screwed up policies in this country. We should address it in an honest way. It's not addressed in an honest way. I don't think I can't just walk into France and say, hey, I'm a French citizen. Give me money, give me education, give me food, take care of me. I can't go to Mexico and say, hey, I want to live here, give me a home, give me a job. They're not going to do that. So they allow their troubled people, the ones that want to get away from the corruption in Mexico, to come into our country. And I think it's wrong that we don't have a better policy to address it. I don't want to hurt people. Some people are here already. We have to find a way to deal with it. But we got to stop this illegal entrance of people from other countries who just want to come in whenever they want to on their own terms, and then require the US to find a way to support them, to feed them, to take care of them, to educate them, to give them health care, and to give them all that. I think that that is another big problem. But we're not talking about issues here. The real problem with this country is we're talking about politics.
Right.
Biden is talking about politics. Trump is talking about politics. Nobody's really talking about these real issues in a real way. And I think it goes back to, we talked about this before, it started with Newt Gingrich, the personality politics that drove, success, winning elections. You'd attack people who I think were shocked at being attacked at the level they were attacked, and they lost.
Who
And
had
it
no
looked like it
idea
was,
how to handle it, how to
yeah,
respond. They, they got beat.
yeah. So it looked
Okay.
like, wow, that's a great strategy. Let's just beat somebody up and call them a name and we could win. That just kept getting worse. And even, I couldn't vote for Hillary Clinton because I was so offended when she said there were half the people in America who didn't support her were deplorable, that they supported a guy like Trump. This is before I even got to know Trump as a personal leader. He was a terrible disappointment as a president. But so is Biden. And we're sitting here, oh my gosh, all these problems. What are we going to do? I'm not sure there's a solution.
Well, I'm not so sure there's a solution either, but some people have to try to find a solution. Otherwise, us, United States of America, is going to cease to exist. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with the governor of Texas putting people out voluntarily. They get out of bus and they go to New York, they go to Washington, they go to Chicago. And what does the mayor of Chicago say? Besides, she's going to take care of these illegal aliens. She says that it's a racist policy on the part of the governor of Texas. Now, is that helping the situation at all?
No, Lori Lightfoot, the mayor of Chicago, is the worst racist that we have in Illinois. Her attacks against, and I've talked to you about this, singling out Arab American store owners as an excuse to make it look like she's doing something about street gangs when they have nothing to do with street gangs. If you're an Arab grocery store or a gas station owner in Chicago, and a gangbanger with a record a mile long shoots somebody, not in your store or on your property, but in front of your store, Lori Lightfoot shuts the Arab store owner down and tells the people we're doing something about crime. But if it's another person who's one of her bankrollers, one of her financiers, a leader of her, the political persuasions that she supports, she doesn't shut them down. In the city, you can shoot somebody in front of a store. They never shut a business down in the downtown Chicago. So she's a racist, and I take nothing that she says at face value. I don't accept it. I don't listen to her. And I'm hoping the city of Chicago finds somebody that can help us. But Chicago they're part of a trend, right? What we're seeing in Chicago is part of a national trend of polarization, anger, name calling, using the F word to refer to people. There's no respect for the office anymore.
And, in the case of Lori Lightfoot, I think she's an angry person. I don't think that, she has a pleasant day once a month. Most of the time when you see her speaking about an issue, she seems so angry. She seems like she's a victim. I think she believes she's a victim, and yet she's the mayor of the city of Chicago, the third largest city in the country. She should think of herself as a great success, not as a victim, and not get angry. She just the other day, she said that she didn't care what people thought, that she was putting money into Black communities and Hispanic communities because they've been neglected for such a long period of time. Well, I don't know that they were neglected by the federal government, the state government, or the city government. I think a great deal of the problem with the Hispanic community, not so much the Hispanic community, but the African-American community, is that they have not been willing to stand up and take responsibility for themselves. That's what I believe.
Yeah, in fact, I wrote a column this week for the Southwest News Herald and the Regional that says, ask the question, when is race appropriate to talk about in an issue? And I said, it's in an incident involving violence. The appropriate time is to ask the community, what are you doing to stop the violence in your own community? Instead, they get a small collective of screamers, people that elevate their voice, 10 or 20, 30 people. They scream louder than the majority. They take control. They defend the criminal, make him look like the victim, and turn it around on the police. If I were living in a community where crime was rampant, and if my son were involved, I'd be standing up wanting to punish my son so that he could come back and be a good person.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't be defending my son saying, oh, he had a gun, he shot it, but it was the police officer's fault for trying to force him to follow the law. So I think the Black community needs to do a job to stand up and assert themselves against these criminals rather than defending them. But I think every community should do that. I think the Hispanic community should do that. I think the Arab community should do that. We had a case where we talked about this already on a podcast where an Arab kid had a gun, and instead of listening to the police officer, he ran. They tackled him. They had to punch him until he let go of the bag that had the gun in it. And instead of acknowledging, oh, yeah, my son had a gun, the mother said, well, I don't know if he had a gun. Maybe the police put the gun there. And I'm thinking, this is why the lesson that we're teaching this kid, you don't have to pay your tuition, borrow as much money as you want. If you don't want to work, you can go and steal money up to $1,000. Thank you, Kim Fox, because we won't prosecute you. And if you're running around with a gun, there's no consequences. It's their fault that you're breaking the law.
And, this racism that we hear about, we've had a president of the United States, who was 50% African American. And yet he grew up, pretty much in the African American community. He associated himself with the African American community. So everybody viewed him, as an African American. He's been president of the United States. Right here in Cook County, the president of the county board is an African American. The mayor of Chicago is an African American. The state's attorney is an African American. Where is all this racism that we keep hearing about that are holding people down?
What are they being denied? The police chief is an African American.
Absolutely.
A large majority of the city council is African American. The school system is, there's so many African Americans. And, that's not to say there wasn't racism in this country. Yes, there was. It was terrible. But I've always believed that civil rights changed that and gave everybody an opportunity to overcome that. You don't hold it as a ticket and say, oh, by the way, I get a free pass because, my great-grandfather was a victim of racism, or my great-great-grandfather was a slave. You don't go back 2 generations or 3 generations and say that today's society owes you something. What do I have to do with the racism that made them? I support everybody, but I also believe in free speech, and I think we shouldn't be bullied because we want to challenge some of those notions to have people call me a racist because I ask a question about, is the African American community doing enough to stop violence in their own community? I don't think they are. And
No,
they have, like you said,
either. No, I agree with you.
Yeah, like you said, they have a Black mayor, they have a Black Cook County board president, they have a Black police chief, the leader of the Chicago Teachers Union, I think, the board members. African Americans have roles and opportunities in leadership. Are they using it the best way possible to address the problems that they say exist? I have to go back and say that the real problem in our society today is the media. The media has stepped back from its objectivity, responsibilities, to be fair and objective and non-judgmental. And they have taken a partisan side and they're promoting it as best they can. And they're the ones allowing the extremists on both sides to scream and silence the majority that's sitting in the middle, afraid to express their opinion.
No, I cannot disagree with anything that you had to say there, Ray. I'd like to get back to Biden's speech for a moment or two. I don't understand how, excuse me, any of the TV networks or cable networks could have given that free time to him to give that highly partisan political speech.
I read that the major TV stations turned him down, like ABC, NBC, and CBS. Again, I didn't watch it, but I did read that the major stations, the cable networks, I think, did.
No, I watched
give him the time.
I know that they're not the most objective network, but occasionally they have some people on there who I think make a lot of sense. But it's just that we're complaining about things. We have to ourselves, you and I, and anyone else that's worried about this country, we have to come up with some positive things that we have to try to get done. And I know it's very difficult when you don't hold public office, but there have been times in this country where the citizens have organized strong enough, had good enough ideas that they could influence, people to accept those ideas, thereby bringing this country together. I mean, those people who President Biden called, almost fascist, they're American citizens. They were
Right.
born here. They were raised here. How much different can they really be than someone such as you or I, who are not Trump supporters, who are totally opposed to him because of his personality? There has to be a way to bridge that gap.
Well, part of it also started with George W. Bush after September 11th, when he said, you're either with us or you're against us. There was no middle ground. There was no ability to achieve consensus. You either accepted what I said or you're the enemy. That's gotten worse. And today, that's basically what Biden is saying. If you don't agree with me, you're a bad person. What he said about he basically painted every Republican and every person who didn't agree with him, they're not all just Republicans, as being a bad person who didn't care about this country, who was a threat to our personal rights, supporting violence. I was just, I don't believe Biden is actually in control of, I think his first 2 years are like the last 2 years of the Reagan administration. Reagan was a brilliant person. Those final 2 years, though, he had Nancy Reagan and I think the other guy, Reagan, what was his name? There was
Reagan.
There was another guy that was helping him.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, and they orchestrated the final 2 years of the Reagan administration, following his policies the way he would have wanted to do it. On the other hand, I think with Biden, his administrators, his consultants, his advisors are doing what they want to do, and he's not controlling them. And I think that's what the problem is. And I don't think he's going to get reelected.
I don't think he's going to get reelected either. I don't think he's going to run. But you bring up a very good point there. You talk about Reagan's policies in that they were being followed by Nancy and several of his close advisors, even though Reagan didn't seem to be totally in touch with things any longer. But why they weren't as successful as they could have been, they didn't have the messenger. The messenger couldn't deliver the message anymore because he wasn't there entirely. Now, I'm not so sure I agree with the way you look at the situation with him, but I'm colorblind when it comes to him. I was a fan of his. I supported him. There's a book about Reagan that mentions me as perhaps his #1 Democratic supporter. So obviously I am not objective when it comes to him. But
that's okay.
Without them, you have to have the message and you have to have the right messenger.
Yeah, I was just looking up his advisors were Jim Baker, Michael Deaver, Edwin Meese, Nancy Reagan. You're talking about a brilliant group of people who really dedicated themselves to what the principles that Reagan represented during his second term. Biden, on the other hand, I hate, being a baby boomer and a senior. I know that, as we get older, I'm 2-3 seconds behind in thought as I'm thinking of something. It takes me an extra few seconds. But I don't think Biden has the kind of support to promote what Biden said he was going to do when he ran for president, when he said he was going to bring everybody together. I don't believe his administration is committed to bringing anybody together. I think his administration believes we need to win the election at all costs, even if we have to tear this country down, and we will use demonization, we will use name calling, we will attack people personally. We won't address the issues, we'll address the people. And when somebody talks, if they attack me as a person, I know they can't argue the points that I made in my column. Right. But somebody that can argue with me about my column hey, I'm more than willing to talk with them about it. But when they turn to personal attacks, you know that's because it's a weakness on their part that they can't win the issues.
One of the strange things about writing a column and having people respond to it, sometimes people will respond to a column you've written criticizing you, and then they
Right.
state what their position is. It's
And-
exactly a position that you or I stated in our
Exactly.
column. They just wanted to, let us know they're complaining about something.
Yeah,
It's
listen,
human nature.
and that's the problem with, I think, politics today. It's too personal. They've shifted from the politics of issues to the politics of personalities. All right, Bill. Anyway, listen, this was a great discussion. I think. Any final thoughts on this that we need to cover?
Well, I would say if there's anybody out there listening to our podcast that has any ideas, suggestions on how to
Yeah.
bring this country together, please let you or I know, because I believe both of us are sincere in trying to do what we can, to return this to the United States of America.
But we do have a growing listener base, so let's ask them again. Send us an email with your thoughts, and don't make it too long. Maybe 1 or 2 paragraphs. Well, if you want, and say if we could read your name, we'll be happy to do that. Or if you'd rather be anonymous, but tell us what you think needs to be done to make America, to bring the country together above this polarization. All right, I'm Ray Hanania.
I'm Bill Lipinski, a fellow American, and I look forward to talking to you next time.
We'll talk to everybody next week. Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye, everybody.